Let me know when it's good to start, Barb.
I will. Okay, all good. Thank you.
Hey, hello everyone. Thank you all so much for coming. I call this meeting of the MMSD Safety and Student Wellness Ad Hoc Committee to order. Thank you all so much for being here. I know that this time is probably very busy for all of you, but we really do appreciate all the work that you all do. But with that, why don't we just go into a check-in? Why don't we just go around and share a rose and a thorn from this week? Mia, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, sure. I haven't really had any thorns, but one rose is that I didn't really have much to do this week, so it was like a really chill week for me, which is nice. Yeah. Joanna?
Thank you. One rose is that I finished my personal essay and supplementals for two of the schools I'm applying to early. And a thorn is still low-key the lack of support at my schools that they're offering right now with the counselor being gone and stuff. So yeah. And does Miss Hots want to go?
I am kind of blank. It is no longer 101 in the classroom next door to me, which was the case on Monday. And I guess that's the good thing. And it's Thursday, so tomorrow's Friday. Mary.
My rose is that my kids are between sports seasons, so we get to eat dinner together. And my thorn is my oven is broken and the repair is so expensive that we just have to get a new oven. I'm gonna toss it to Maya, please.
I would say that my rose this week is the weather. My favorite time of the year is fall, and I really enjoy when the weather stays consistent. Not in the cold, consistent way, but I would say my thorn would be just how busy I've gotten in the next couple weeks. It's a little sad because I've enjoyed having a little more time with babies, but now I'm busy again. So I will pass it off to Andre.
Thank you. Welcome everyone. My roles would be I've got some contracting things off of my desk, which is great. And probably my thorn is there's a whole bunch more to go. So we're in that season. So and I will pass it to Ruben.
Thanks, Andre. Hey, everybody. I guess my rose is I also really love this weather. I didn't know I was a fall person, but I think this is a special kind of fall, so I love it now. And it's beautiful with all the leaves and the colors. And then my thorn is that it's already the end of October, and I feel like I need to start practicing saying 2023 before it's that year. So it's kind of going by too fast. And I think that's everybody unless Barb is going to share. I don't think she will.
Yeah, no, that's everyone. We can move on. I don't think we have quorum yet, but
Yes, you do.
Oh, we do?
Yep.
Oh, okay, now we do. Well, I mean, the meetings are not yet available. The minutes are not yet available from last week. But before we move on, I think we can continue sharing our rose and thorns to those that just joined. We're just sharing a rose and a thorn from the past week.
So Mike, I think that's you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Rose and a Thorn. Sorry for being late. I actually just came back from visiting a school. Let's see. A Rose would be voting. I voted on Tuesday, and it was very, very fulfilling as a citizen of this country, while and also seeing a large line at the early voting place. So it took me a while to vote because so many people were voting. So that was definitely a rose because I need some reassurance in my faith in democracy nowadays. And then let's see, Thorn. I think I've been visiting a lot of schools, about 5 schools a week, just checking in with staff. And there's a lot of like love and a lot of like energy and still wanting to do it, but also it's wearing on them, and that, just it's tough for me because it's tough to say, well, there's a solution to this that can feel like it's immediate and or something that can help the scholars and the staff and the school right away. And some of these are long-term things like we're going to be discussing tonight, and things we have been discussing as a committee for months. And that's been, I don't know, it always kind of wears. I think everyone here, when we're representing other people and we're trying to speak up, it's just it can wear on you. So that's what I'm kind of holding right now.
I think Rebecca Ramirez just joined too.
Hello, Dr. Ramirez. I don't know if you heard, but we're just sharing.
I did. I'm sorry that my Zoom was jumped in and jumped out 3 times, so I'm sorry about that. My thorn and my rose are the same thing, just the resiliency of the staff and the families that I and everybody works with. It's just heartening at times and beautiful at times, the resiliency. So that's all I have to say.
Hello, Megan. Thank you for joining us. We're just sharing a rose and a thorn from our last week.
Okay, one good thing was I submitted a very big essay that I was very worried about, and I ended up getting an A on it. So I'm very happy about that. Thanks, guys. And a thorn was apparently today during lunch there was a altercation where the police ended up getting involved. And it was just a very real reminder of why the work we're doing is important.
Thank you. Okay, we can move on. I mentioned this before, but I'll just say it again. The meetings are not yet available. So we can just move on to the next item. Maya, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, thank you. So the next item is the update on stakeholder group outreach. So at this point, we have reached out to all of the stakeholder group liaisons and had a general conversation with them, and somewhat kind of started the thought of how we're going to reach our stakeholder groups. The goal right now is to get electronic input and in-person input. So we have been working, well, I would say Barb has done an amazing job at working with the district in getting our questions formatted into a survey that our data folks can track a lot easier, instead of us trying to create a Google form on our end to capture some of the responses from some of the folks that will be answering the questionnaire. And so we're going to be sending those out to students, staff, parents, community partners and advocates and other related professionals and officials. And I believe the survey should hopefully be ready tomorrow is the hope. And then we can send it off and see what responses that we get. However, we do understand that electronic ways of engagement is somewhat difficult just because access and other related issues that people might have. So we also value right now the in-person input in the hopes that we can get students and staff and families to give us some in-person real-time responses. Let's see. So far, we found that based on some of our conversations with some of the stakeholder group liaisons, is that some of the best ways that might work as far as communication outside of like the in-person input and electronic input is through morning announcements at the schools, and then social media, obviously, backpack mail, newsletters, PTO, and presidents, like communicating that information through them. And then also, once we have gathered the information to those, or the responses to those 3 guiding questions, we're looking to put it and synthesize it into a report and to be shared with the core members of this ad hoc and at a future meeting time. My hope is that we can get some pretty concise responses where we can say, you know, majority of folks said this, and then we can all discuss later on what we want to actually add to the grid and what recommendations, and that's like the last part of all of this. And so I know that with some of the liaisons, we did talk about, you know, possible ideas of how we might reach out. The ways that we stated, or that I just stated, was just based off of the conversations that we had with folks. But we can definitely open it up to everyone on, you know, some of the thoughts that they may have that we may not have mentioned, or in the past like week or so that you've thought about it in XYZ way might be better, or XYZ way might be something that you want to do. But you might need support from us as the co-chair, Savini and I, and Barb, or the district support. So I don't know, do you want to start, Jessica? Just because I know like we kind of discussed it the other day, last night, about plans that you might kind of brainstormed, but we might be able to do at the high school level.
Well, yeah, I talked to Maya and Lavinia and Barbara yesterday night. And as far as getting out the survey, they had the idea of setting up tables at maybe events that parents and students would be attending that could be staffed and maybe by students even, maybe, yeah. And so that they could get in-person feedback that way. I'm not 100% sure whether that's just them taking the survey on paper or exactly how that would work. I don't know what the idea was there. I expressed that's probably not a good way to get staff because they're just not going to pass by tables and whatnot. They can already be in their spaces in the schools. But I said that, you know, with my union connections, we can work to reach out to the high schools and any other schools that we need to try to get staff input that way.
Yeah, thank you. Any ideas, since Mike also is on the call too, just ideas of dates and times that you guys think might be, you know, you can get the most folks to complete the survey and or talk with you about it. I'm just envisioning like if there's like a teacher in service day or something that doesn't necessarily take away from the time that they're doing for preparing and things like that. But
so the next PD day is December, I want to say 5th or 6th. which is a Monday. Also depending on how parent-teacher conferences go, sometimes staff have more, because it obviously looks different at levels. So like high school, it's going to be completely virtual. So that might be a time, and it's a lot less, I think, regimented than the elementary and middle school times are. So that at least for high school staff, that might, I mean, Jessica, you'd tell me better. You'd say that better than me, but like that seems like that would be a reasonable time to get that sort of input. Also, I mean, well, probably not PCT days. I would say for November, it'd probably be parent-teacher conferences or PD days, when staff kind of have the full day and it's not a student contact day.
What do you mean by parent-teacher conference day? Like just to have a Zoom to get together with people that are, I'm unclear.
Yeah, I guess we could, if there's even like during a lunch space or something where it's like we could hold it then.
We're told to stagger our lunches, so I'm not sure. I don't know about other
Of course. I mean, there's never a perfect time, but I'm just wondering if there's, I mean, it's going to be not that conferences aren't stressful, but just like it's because there's not that student contact back to back to back. I think it's a little bit more relaxed. So I think we could, or maybe we need to schedule multiple times during that time, or multiple sessions, I mean, if we keep it to like half an hour, it's like a morning, a midday, and afternoon. So depending on what people's schedules are like, just to give, and if we structure it in a way that we can maximize getting input as opposed to trying to, I guess, shoehorn. And also, so that's just off the top of my head. I'll be honest.
Well, and I also was thinking, since many of our groups will be meeting for recertification talks, that maybe we through our union rep groups as well.
Yeah, excellent point. Thanks, Jessica. For that too. Yeah, recertification starts next week. So we're sending a lot of information out, and we could definitely put that in. It's something we could also put in our faculty rep Google Classroom, in terms of just getting the word out, trying to maximize how many staff see it, because I think this is an important way to get this feedback on this topic.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mike, and Jessica. Yeah, I think that those are some really good ideas. I think that's where we're hitting a little bit of a roadblock on how to engage like teachers and staff in a way that doesn't necessarily put an extra burden on them, but allows them to participate as much as they can in a greater sense. So yeah, absolutely appreciate that. I guess is there any other folks?
Really quick, Maya. I think Joanna was raising her hand, so I just want to check in.
Okay, yeah, Joanna. I was just gonna ask if anybody else wanted to put some in.
Yeah, thank you. So basically for students, if you guys were to like go to places and have them sign up or whatever, I think some good times like may work. I know La Folla is really big on basketball, and so is East. So like those types of games, like for those two schools, definitely during the basketball season when a lot of students go to watch those games. But I'm not really sure with Memorial West, like how, like what the sports that are really big there. So like La Folla and East though would be good for basketball.
Well, and I think that's a great idea. And I think talking to staff at the buildings, like we can come up with other ideas that would be well attended. I think too, we probably want to play it around different types of events as well. So we get a good, gamut of, the types of people that show up, whether that be theater events, sports events, parent nights. We have certain groups of parents that have meetings at the schools and so forth. I think those could be really good places to hit too.
Yes, that's great. Go ahead, Lavinia.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say thank you for those. Mia and Megan, you guys have any other ideas on ways we can kind of get students involved in this and get their feedback?
I mean, honestly, the busiest time at Memorial to for kids is lunchtime, and then like putting just like a table or something like in the cafeteria and just like being there for students, like they can come up to you and like talk to you. That may be a good idea, but otherwise, everything else sounded great. So yeah.
At West, our cafeteria is actually not super busy. People normally like get their food and then leave. Our school entrance, like the Ash entrance, is normally where like most students kind of just go to, and we've had like BSU has had lunches there. Like um I think if you were going to try to get it anywhere at West, it would probably be the Ash entrance.
Yeah, Joanna, go ahead.
Also like another idea that we can do, like Lavinia and we can go talk to different student councils at different schools and see if they would like to help us out with this, just because like it would affect their school too. So kind of like going to like LaFollette Student Council. East I think has student government or like Congress or something like that. West I believe has one, and the Memorial will have to figure out what who to contact for like a student group that we can contact that would be helping. It's like the Young Progressives maybe.
Yeah, there's a couple clubs, but Memorial doesn't have a council.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Do we want to check? Does anybody know who this new phone person is on the meeting? Galaxy S22 Ultra. Do you want to say who you are? Or Barb, I don't know if you let them in knowing who they were.
Yes, Galaxy S22 Ultra, the phone that just joined the meeting. Please tell us your name.
And you're muted if you're talking.
It's Maddie Reese.
Along the Mississippi. Maddie, thank you. I'm just gonna rename you. One moment.
While we're waiting for Maddie to be renamed, I just kind of want the committee to remember that there was a previous committee to us that had some really solid recommendations, and I think who had done some really good groundwork like we are attempting. So I don't want those recommendations or those similar concerns or the information that they have that allows us to really look at different concerns that may be evolving as, I think that might have been 2 years ago. But it was a well-rounded committee that I think had some pretty solid concerns and recommendations. So just not for us not to lose sight of that committee's recommendations and the follow through for those recommendations as we try to merge this committee's recommendations and or concerns and shortcomings.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca, for that. I know that at the beginning of the committee, we somewhat went over some of the information from previous committees that have done very similar work. And yes, I think we obviously want to keep in mind of that, but at the same time, just remember that, even the previous, not to lose sight of what the previous committee may have done, but not to say that some things are different or the same. It's just that, we are in a different time. A lot of things have happened in amidst that time and today, but yes, absolutely keep in sight of some of the work.
Yeah, well, I mean, and then that implementation strategies do take time, so that, there are some recommendations that may have been made from previous committees that are very similar to what we're recommending now that may really be an artifact of an implementation timeframe. So it just takes time to put those things in place.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And so like our work right now and how it may take time once we even figure out what we're going to do and what we recommend, keep in sight that that might take time as well in the future. Yeah, thank you for that. Any other stakeholder liaisons want to just kind of say like their ideas of how we can do some of the outreach or what outreach tactics that they would like to pursue and or may need help with, so we can kind of put them out there. Go ahead, Mara.
I was just gonna say, I've been thinking about the best ways to communicate with parents when they're actually in the school, and most of my ideas are limited to my elementary school experience, unfortunately, because I didn't, for a variety of reasons, including the pandemic, like when my kids were in middle school, I barely set foot in the school, I'm embarrassed to say, but for elementary schools, I was thinking of having tables and trying to talk to parents during things like the Scholastic Book Fair, or like at Crestwood, we have a big caper fundraiser in the spring, or even sometimes programs during the school day. Like we used to have Sean McMahon, who's awesome, at Crestwood, and she would have these amazing music programs that really, really a lot of parents would come to. And I mean, I was just thinking of having tables during some of those events to reach parents, but that's really the extent of my thoughts.
Oh, those are some really good ideas. I remember being at the Scholastic Book Fairs, and there's a lot of families there. And sometimes, depending on the school, they might even make it like a big event.
Yep.
I wonder, like for middle schools, I know that I know that James C. Wright, and I just know this because my kids go to Wright, but I know that they have like a monthly parent meeting or a bi-monthly parent meeting, depending on like where the parent meeting might fall. And they usually do it as a hybrid. So I know that we could possibly ask during that time to see if parents can, you know, just quickly fill it out and or take it and maybe do it. But I wonder if there are other schools that have something similar for middle school. And I don't see Dr. Hicks on the call because that would have been a great question for her. Go ahead, Ruben.
Yeah, can I just ask, with all these ideas, is there a point person who's going to go back to all these schools and ask them for this, or are we recording it? It just seems like a lot of stuff is coming. I'm not quite sure what the next steps are. And then also, I guess, I thought in the meantime, between this meeting and next meeting, unless there's a timeline that's shorter than that, people can go and ask those schools and get those feedback. I heard some people talking about, like Joanna mentioned, the different school groups and stuff. So I was just curious.
Yeah, so Barb is taking notes. And so, which then once the meeting is over, she'll upload the meeting notes. But with that, yes, the next step would be then Lavinia and I working back with the liaisons and just making sure they have like the necessary resources to support them in doing some of the ideas that they may want to actually pursue. So this time it's just really kind of like we've had the initial conversations with folks. Some folks have already kind of started the work, but also giving a chance for folks to share out on some of the ideas that they came up with, just in case there might be some other ways in which people think might also assist them, especially if they're having trouble with plan A. Maybe there's a plan B that folks can kind of get to. Because we did have all these conversations individually, and we want to make sure that, you know, the body knows some of the information as well together. So, but yes, that would be the next step. is to kind of go back and implement some of these ideas and get the districts to help us with as well. I know it's been a couple of weeks since we've all met, and I know that in that time it did take that much time to get. There was a lot of meetings, just know, with the district and liaison. So, but we finally are getting some movement. So hopefully that answers your question, Ruben. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Does another liaison want to kind of say what they're thinking? And if any core members have any ideas too, like feel free to give your ideas as well. I know that part of it is, so we're going to be talking with the alders as well to see how they can engage their districts, especially their districts that most of the districts have schools in them, whether it's elementary, middle, and high school, or all three. So definitely working with some of them to get the questionnaires out. Any idea possibly how we might be able to hold maybe some city forums around this? And I'm not talking about like really big, where we have lots of city like residents in a call, because that would be too crazy to manage, but something a lot smaller that might be outside of, just the alders meeting with their constituents. Go ahead, Ruben.
Yeah, I know that there's a joint city school board committee. I think they meet maybe once a month. I don't know if the timeline is going to match up, but I can bring that back to the deputy who works with them and see if they have any ideas about spaces that they're connected to that might be better places to share this out. I think my first thought was also that portal that we have for the Ask Anything portal or whatever that is for the school. I don't know if you can post questions there so that people can either give us ideas about places or just post the survey there so that people are kind of there when they're doing that. You might also get an overrepresentation of people who are already upset about something. So I don't know if that'll be the most accurate feedback, but I just thought that might be helpful as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm not sure, Barb, do you know if we're able to post questions, or do we just post questions and people just respond to it?
So the Let's Talk tool is a different thing. That's really about. We're already gonna have the thing electronic as it is. So I don't think it will pay to put it in another place electronically like that. That tool is really for specific questions that people have of different staff around the district.
Got it. Okay.
Looking for a little bit more about how we can staff the in-person tables at the schools. Knowing that we are going to try to get in touch with each of the PTO or PTA presidents at the schools where they are active. Looking for high school students to staff these tables at these events that you're talking about. Hopefully that at all 6 schools we can have high school students and or staff who are able to sit at these tables. But the elementary and the middle school, that's more of an issue. Looking more for some help on people who can actually go there and staff the tables. So at the tables we would have both options. If people want to do it electronically, we would simply give them a piece of paper that shows them where to go do that, or they take the survey in printed form right then and there and return it at a later date. So looking for more ideas about staffing the tables at the schools.
Yeah, thank you for that, to center us back in. Mike, go ahead.
Yes, and I apologize because I don't have a good idea regarding your specific question, Barb. in terms of at the schools. I was just thinking as this is off of the city spaces discussion, if we could also make sure we're utilizing, I think, some of the community centers, especially in the neighborhoods that I think sometimes don't get represented in a conversation like this. Like I'm thinking Vera Court on the north side, Kennedy Heights, Warner Park, the spaces where sometimes the families don't, they don't exactly hit up all the parts of Madison, but the families and the kids go to those spots. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a possible, just as we're spitballing city spaces, if we can think of and there's lots of, that's one of the things that makes the city great, is that there's a lot of great community center spaces for people to meet. And I think let's use it to our advantage.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. To Barb's question about staffing, having students and possibly staff or parents to man some of the in-person options to give feedback. Does anyone have any ideas of how that might work? Go ahead, Mia.
Yeah, so I know that for Memorial we have a big volunteering club. We could have this as a volunteer opportunity for students, so they can get volunteer hours for being at these tables. So you need volunteer hours for NHS or anything like that. So it'd be a great opportunity for students to get those. And that's basically what we should probably do for students, is offer that as a volunteer opportunity. But I'm not sure for staff though or anything like that.
Yeah, Mia, that's super smart, and we could totally get that set up with SYS, which is the name of the club. We were also talking about possibly hosting, or this is a little different from the tables, but I just wanted to say that we were also thinking about either going into a few clubs that have a small number of people, or taking some students aside and kind of having those conversations and recording their thoughts, rather than have them come up to you and be out of curiosity. And it would kind of be like a focus group, with their consent, of course, to be recorded and everything. But I also wanted to say that if you guys have any ideas for clubs that we could do that with, please share that as well. That's a really good idea, Mia. Thank you for that.
We have a ton of affinity groups at East. I don't know what the comparable ones would be at the other schools. I know BSU is around the whole district, but between GSA, gender equity, we have a Latino group, we have a Native American group, we have a Middle Eastern group, we have all sorts of different groups. And going to those students, I think, could be useful. Plus Student Congress.
Mia, you're at West, right?
I'm at Memorial, actually.
Oh, you're at Memorial. I'm sorry. Is there a West student?
Yeah, Megan's at West.
Megan, I apologize. Sorry, it's been a couple of years it's been over a year since I worked at West. Is One West still a thing at the school, or is that kind of like something that exists in name only?
I haven't heard of it before.
That means that it's not existing. Answered my question. Thank you. No worries. It used to be a group where all the student leaders would come together, not as like a student council, but as a kind of like a feedback loop for staff to hear from all the groups. So.
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea as well, because some of the student organizations on campus. I used to work so much with college students, sorry, and I used to work a lot with student orgs. But no, student organizations that are like BSU and like the Asian Association or African Association, all different ones. working with them to kind of give their feedback would be good. And I can definitely help with that as well. If that's easiest, if we are able to get, I don't know, is there a list at each school, and this is kind of posed to the students, is there a list of organizations that you get and contact people for those organizations?
East has stuff on their website. I wouldn't be surprised if the other schools do too.
Yeah, Memorial has a list of clubs on their website as well. I'm not sure if they have like advisor contact listed with them, but that's definitely something that students can probably talk to other people about to get.
And staff can figure out some of that as well. I mean, to figure out leaders of, advisors of groups and so forth.
Yeah, because that would be very helpful in like each, so I know that like each student that's probably on this committee, and maybe some of your friends might be able to help like reach out to some of those organizations or clubs, and maybe see if they would like to complete the survey as well. And again, I think the idea of volunteer hours is super good because that would also be helpful as well. Barb, did we answer the question?
I don't think we have, and then that was not the intention tonight to solve all those problems. So this is good to get some ideas generation. That's what we were about tonight. So there will be a lot of work to do in between to see what next steps about getting in-person people in the schools. And we will have to be talking to some internal people as well to discuss with the principals some ways to possibly staff tables to do this. Okay, no, so I think we can move on if everybody is comfortable with that.
Yeah, can I get some thumbs up if you people are good and moving on? Okie dokie, I'm seeing a thumbs up.
I just have a question. So this was really focused on in-person information, right? So we feel that we've already exhausted like social media.
No, the idea about the social media, the backpack mail, things like that we use to communicate directly with students and families, that would be something that we would use to get the word out. So here's the survey, here's how you get it.
Okay.
And here's where the tables are going to be and when they're going to be there at your schools. It is not to put the survey out there that way. It's
Okay,
just to let people know about it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thanks for asking that, Rebecca, because that is a really important clarification. Appreciate that. Okay, it looks like we are good to move on. Community partners and advocate stakeholder group report. Barb is going to, some of the folks that are on the call tonight may not have seen this, and I know we went over it last meeting, but we're going to just show it again. The report that Dana did from her stakeholder group. And if you want to go ahead and share it, Barb. Thank you. And so, yeah, so Dana's report was pretty in depth. And again, this is me saying that, saying this information, but I just want to just reiterate that all of the input received from the sources or whatever sources that you all will be working on will be reported to the core group in this similar format. And then the core group will then decide on what to include in the actual recommendations. So again, it's the liaisons are here to work with the stakeholder groups to compile the information, get the information from folks, and then they will create a report. And again, if you need help with creating of the report, like we're definitely, Lavinia and Barb can definitely assist you. But we'll gather all the information in this similar format based on these questions. And then this would then be reported back to the larger group, the core members, in this kind of like report share out. So what happened during these conversations? This is some of the feedback that we got for question, I think this is question 2. Or no, yeah, question 2. What would you like MMSD to do differently or more? And so this was some of the information that came back from Dana. The top parts of this report, the background, it's not necessary to go into, percentages and such. It's just that for Dana's particular group that she reached out, she kind of gave us a little more in-depth information. However, we would like to know who you reached out to, what organizations you reached out to, how many folks you did include in the conversation. So if I'm at all the community centers, if I've had like 10 conversations, in those 10 conversations, there were 5 people in each of those, then I would be 50 people that I reached out to. Just so that we get a sense of like, 1, how many people are we reaching? But then 2, if there are organizations specifically that you're working with, like Central Hispano or something like that, that you let us know that that's who you're working with, just because what we don't want to happen, a lot of folks are part of different groups. So I might be part of, a parent stakeholder group. I'm also might be part of, as an elected official, the elected official stakeholder group, right? And so we want to make sure that we're not duplicating work, and we want to be as efficient as possible. And so that's really important for that. Barb, is there anything I missed on that?
Yeah,
I think I pretty much got it.
Thank you. So the main questions are in this report and they're all answered right underneath. So very, very swift and concise report. Also trying to really focus on getting input from the schools. I think that we have done a fair amount of outreach to organizations in the MMSD community for sure so far, and do intend to get a little bit more, but really do want to focus on the schools, the staff, the students, and the parents. So hoping to focus more in that area. But yes, these are the things that we're looking for in the report. And then particularly when the core group then begins to deliberate on recommendations to the board, hopefully we will have these kinds of reports to go from that will eventually end up in the recommendations grid.
And thank you, Barb. Any questions about this, what I just mentioned? And feel free to come off mute if you have any questions. Okay, so does everyone got it? Okay, great. It's that whole thing of like, I see blank stares and I'm just waiting. Okay, cool. Then we can move on to the next item, which is the recommendation grid. And then Barb, if you want to share that, unless you are already sharing. Got it, thank you. And so this recommendation grid, again, it's similar information to what I mentioned the last time, but I just want to reiterate that the grid will be the basis for how the core group has our discussions once we get all the input received from the stakeholder groups and from the liaisons. And then we will utilize this grid to discuss like the main ideas from the input and formulate specific recommendations to the committee members, and we'll vote on what we want to push forward to the board and or the district based off of like where our conversations come from, if there are budgetary issues or budgetary items and or any policies and or things that may not need budget approval from the board or policies from the board, but might just be a recommendation to the actual district. And then we'll also add any kind of suggestions or comments at the end of our work if it's necessary on items, again, that we may all agree on or may not fully agree on, but we do feel like it's strong enough to become a possible recommendation or a very specific recommendation. So does that make sense to everyone?
Sorry, I'm a little confused. So this, what we're looking at now, is based off the grid that we created earlier, or is this a separate list? That I think a couple months ago we got a grid of action items that we wanted to see, correct? And then is this that?
This is that. It sure is.
Okay, so then the next steps are the school board will approve if they are actionable, but some of them are already in progress. Is that what I'm understanding?
No, these are just recommendations from this committee to the board. The board will not, these are the recommendations that will come from the input that we get. But there's just 2 columns that have been added about whether or not a particular item may have a budgetary implication or not. We're not going to put numbers in here because there's only a few people that can actually put numbers to particular recommendations, but we would make note of whether or not it would take staff or other kind of resources.
Okay.
And if there are policy recommendations, then of course, that's at the board level. Again, it's just a box that's listed there to let them know that we think that this committee thinks that there may be policy implications around some of the recommendations. So I don't want to get too hung up on that. This is really more about the categories and the main items over here about what this committee would like to see changed. And the school board then takes it up from there. And then implementation dates would be more solid at that point as they discuss the recommendation. So the timeline, the status, the budgetary and the policy recommendations are things that will be used down the road by the board, probably more so than this committee, but what we're really looking for are category and main items.
So does that mean that when this goes to the board, this body is done?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
Does that answer all your questions, Ruben?
Yeah, that's helpful. Did you say the timeline of when it's going to go to the board, or when we want to have this finalized?
We were attempting
We're
to
looking-
I'm sorry, go ahead, Maya.
Go ahead, Barb. No, go ahead.
We're attempting to get as much input as we can before winter break.
Okay.
And definitely want to begin to talk about some of the input coming in before winter break. We're hoping for that. We're hoping that people can really get out and get the surveys out there during the month of November and see if we can start discussing recommendations in December.
Yeah, so we would like to wrap it up by the end of December. The board we will go into budgetary discussions for the next school year in January. And so that's one reason why we are trying to really push hard and get as much input now, and then have the conversations in December to kind of narrow it down, so that when January does roll around, we have in hand things that have come from all the hard work that this committee has done, and all the hard work that I hope that students and staff put into responding to us and being able to be a part of this. So we want real actionable things to come forth. And so that this grid is, again, like Barb said, is just more so for us to compile our information, our thoughts, and what we want to move forward with. And the other parts will then would be something that we'll work on for as a board and an administration. So any other questions about this? Rebecca, it looks like you were going to say something.
No.
Oh, okay. Your box just lit up green. Okay, cool. Any other questions about the next steps with the action grid? Okay, everyone's.
No, actually,
looking-
I do have a question.
Okay,
I
cool.
just, are there links? If you went back to the action grid, Barbara, there's, short phrases there. Are there links? So for example, let me see one that might be a really good example. Like, what are we referencing? Go up, please, Barb. Okay, let me maybe just start with summer planning category, main item, city program, low staff turnout, summer school, pay cut, burnout, and staff wellness. Is there like a link that can reference like more extensively what exactly are we saying there? Is what's the main item there? And what is or is it Barbara, is it under recommendation is where the link is? So if the main item is this issue right here, is there a link under recommendation? What is our specific action items that we're recommending?
Yes. So
Okay.
yes, that's how I see it too. This list of things that, and you're in the first example that you're using right there.
Yes.
That is something that Gordon Allen probably added to this grid way early on in our discussion. So he would be responsible for discussing with the core group what exactly that means, why it's in here, and what we want to do with it going forward. Is there a recommendation specific to that this committee can make around that? So that is the kind of discussions that we thought the core group would be having about every item in this grid.
Okay,
One by
so
one.
yeah, so I'm just saying, all right, we've had a lot of discussion. We've been all over the place. We've covered a number of topics. So when I look at recommendation timeline implementation, is there a link that we can put in there that is specific about what we are recommending regarding low staff turnout, summer school pay cut, burnout, and staff wellness?
And when you say link, are you talking about to another column that says recommendations?
So the third column is recommendation and timeline implementation.
Right.
Do we have already formulated recommendations to address the main item?
No, I don't believe that we do. No. And that's why this grid is ongoing and fluid.
Okay.
So as you can see, the only thing that's been added to this grid and that was a potential timeline. And way back in when this committee started, that may have been realistic then. And we have to review it again when the core group actually starts discussing these individual items to see that. There's no recommendation in that box right now. There's just a timeline. So we need to dig into exactly what does that mean? What do we want the district to do around all those issues? And is that something that this ad hoc wants to recommend to the board? Or is that just something that the committee wants the board to be aware of as they get toward summer school.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Mhm.
And,
Right. So this,
and it just, that's somewhat nebulous, right?
Yes.
Or at least in my opinion, right? That the main item, what exactly are we articulating here? Low staff turnout, summer school pay cut, burnout, and staff wellness. I mean, specifically, what are we articulating that needs to have specific recommendations to address that, right?
That's what we're looking for, yes.
Thank you, Barb.
Yes. And Gordon is definitely gonna have to be a part of the discussions. He is still a member of this core group. And he intends to continue that. So when we do get to the point where the core group is doing their deliberations on this grid, he's gonna have to play a big role in that. And then I know that Maya will take up other things that Ananda may have added to this early on. So yeah, we need to clarify it and get solid recommendations in there so that they make sense to the board.
Okay, thank you. I mean, some of them under main items are less nebulous, autonomy on planning time. That makes, for me, maybe because I'm an educator, that makes sense. No meetings during that time. I mean, that's very specific. I'm not sure exactly revision of grade policies, what are we looking at there? So, yeah, I think some of those are pretty clear and others need to be more defined.
Yes, some are practice suggestions for staff going forward.
Okay, thank you.
That one in particular,
All right.
I would say.
So then my general question is, how do we get that clarification so that we can be more specific in our recommendations and thus in our timeline, and then knowing if it has budgetary implications or policy implications?
So getting everybody in the same room at the same time and probably having Dr. Hicks here is going to be required to at least represent the Associate Superintendent's office on this. And, probably again, staff wellness people, Leah Esser and others to put more solid statements into this grid.
Okay, thank you.
yeah, and I just want to just remind everybody that when this grid was created, I think Barb kind of mentioned it somewhat. It was based off of the conversations that we all have been having during the summer months in early, I won't say spring, like late spring, beginning of summer and things like that. So it is a fluid document. So what's here right now doesn't necessarily need to still be here unless we all decide that we want it to continue to be there, right? But this is just based off of our conversations as a body with, at that time, not necessarily input from the community in the ways in which that we're doing now. So just to remind everyone, it is fluid, but I agree to kind of solidify like what then we are looking at and what we want and how in depth we need to go in making sure that we can get the best possible recommendations possible to the board and to the administration. Thank you, Rebecca, for just trying to get in a little more nuance than what the document is showing.
Well, and I mean, and this whole discussion of stakeholders, is that correct? I mean, so we're trying to get all the information from the stakeholders as to what their concerns are, what their priorities are, to then fold over to these categories and these main items to see where we have congruency and maybe difference. Am I understanding that right? Or correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to understand how we're taking the stakeholder information and this particular grid to make recommendations.
Right. No, you're right in your thinking. For instance, the categories, these are the categories based off in the main items that were based off of our conversations, right? And so summer planning might still be a category that is super important to our stakeholders, right? And they might have something similar to what we said in the first cell and under main items, right? The city summer programming, you know, how like staff are like low staff turnout and whatnot. And it may be similar and it may be different. And they may have more in-depth responses to that, right? But you are right in the sense of thinking that we will look at this, what we've said, what the stakeholders have said, but really kind of put them together. And, you know, some of this may change, right? Like based off of the core group's conversation on how we are going to do that together and mesh that information together. So hopefully that answers your question, Rebecca. Not really sure. Because I want to make sure that we feel good about our next steps as a core team and as liaisons. And I want to make sure that everyone feels good about their participation. So hopefully that answers. Okay, I think you said yes. Barbie can stop shaking.
So this has already started a very good conversation about how this is going to work in the end. So Rebecca's questions are very good. That is exactly where we're headed. That's why this is complicated. You're going to get probably a ton of information based on the input, the outreach that we're doing. So some of these things that are in here now may fall way down on the ladder. Other things are going to rise to the top. That is the point of the core group discussion. Let's get at that. What is the most important thing? Prioritize it. I don't see this group getting hung up on budgetary estimates because that's not your job. I kind of hesitated on including that in this grid because I don't think it's where the focus should be. It's really on content. What is it that the community is saying in regard to these 3 questions that we are asking? That's what we're after. And if these things fall somewhere else, so be it. I did add something here just today on a couple of suggestions that were made about the conversation that we had about the emergency protocol communications. So can we do some training for parents? Can we do something for protocols for drills in schools where there are active construction zones? Yes, by all means, let's talk about that. And yeah, can the communications department handle that? Fine. Okay, that's a recommendation. Good. Let's do that really fast because that's super simple. And they agreed to do it anyway based on the conversation that we had at that meeting. So that's why these things are here. Just to document, okay, we had a pretty serious discussion with the students about how to communicate with them when there's a crisis. Those are the things that we can start to do almost immediately. And so that is the scope. Let's see what kind of input that we get now to add to this. And then we'll come back and we'll have these discussions like you're having right now. That's how this is going to work. And the board will say, yep, let's do that. Nope, let's not do that. If there are budgetary implications, they will have to deliberate that themselves. And so, you know, the budget process starts in January and goes for several months. So this is a beginning. They really want this information when they start out so that it is part of the whole budget process at the beginning rather than coming in at the end. So I hope I'm helping. I'm not sure. I really think the content is more important for this committee than worrying about timeline or status or budgetary or policy things. Those things will be determined by the board in the end. but also are things that this committee can, you can talk about it, but we're not here to change policy. We're here to make recommendations to the board who would make policy changes eventually. So yes, we need a link to recommendations for each of these things that actually end up in the grid.
Thank you. That was extremely clarifying for me, Barb. Appreciate
Awesome.
it.
Thank you. So the core group will be doing a lot of soul searching after we get this input in and we get these reports. And the student voice is extremely important for this group. And that's I know the board's excited about that. We have a
Yeah, we're
really
always excited.
interesting structure. It's great.
We love youth input. Okay. So is everyone good now on just the recommendation grid and having a good clarifying understanding of it? Thumbs up. Yes, okay, I'm seeing smiles. I'm seeing some blank stares, but mostly smiles and thumbs up. Okay, thank you. So the next steps in our next meeting dates. So there's a suggestion of having our next meeting at least in 2 weeks. Just to start to hopefully get responses for our and reports back. And so that would give us November 10th as a date. But we can definitely give more time, but hopefully in 2 weeks we'll have the survey hopefully by tomorrow, so we can start sending that out and start getting stuff in on that, or start getting responses in on the survey itself. But as far as like in person, does 2 weeks give enough time for some folks to start the process and connecting with their stakeholder groups and start compiling some information? Or do we want to do so November 10th is in 2 weeks, and then November 17th, it would be like 3 weeks. So you can come off mute if you have a preference.
So my question is, if we have it in 3 weeks, will we have another meeting after that, since it has to be to the finalized in December?
Yeah, so we would definitely have, pardon?
Sorry, I just didn't even know what the student schedule is or how all of that works at the end of the year.
Yeah, so in November, if we do it November 17th, that would be 3 weeks. So that would give folks 3 weeks to kind of compile information. If we go out to 3 weeks, I would like to put on the group of getting as many reports done as possible, or some kind of reporting back if we go that far out, just because you're right, Ruben, we won't have a lot of time in December. It will get very close to December, but I'm definitely thinking having another meeting in November after that 17th. But if we do go 17th, then I would like to try to get as many reports in as possible. Mari?
I would just vote for meeting again on the 10th, because the 17th, like, we're getting into conferences and getting closer to Thanksgiving. And I mean, even if we might not be able to get in all of the schools by the 10th, I think it would be better if we meet then, but that's just my 2 cents.
It's definitely
no, thank you.
possible to keep the committee updated as much as possible. So if you want to stay in the same cadence of every 2 weeks, it's probably easier to stay in the cadence that you're in. And we report out as much as we can at the time that we meet. We may have a very short meeting on the 10th, if that's the case, but we'll keep staying with the cadence so until we get our input coming in and our reports coming in. Is that okay? Yeah, we sure don't want to run into, we can't do anything on the 24th. That's Thanksgiving. And I know that things get kind of crazy like the week before, something like that. And I know December goes really fast no matter what. But the committee is in charge here. Let's every 2 weeks we'll keep it up and see how we're coming along, and you can evaluate it then.
So
Okay. Andre.
I was just gonna say, so as we were saying, the 10th meeting, if we stay with the cadence of 24th, which obviously wouldn't happen. So then do we go 2 more weeks out from the 24th? I'm just booking things. So like if I'm not getting it on my calendar, and I don't know if that's for others to know in December already when we're meeting, I think you may not get quorum at some of these meetings. So like from my perspective, I would like to book out December now so that we know and are aware of when those meetings are taking place.
Really good question, because it just so happens that there's 5 Thursdays in December this year. So I would recommend that we start on December 1. So that'll be the week after Thanksgiving, and we're gonna go from there and see how often you need to meet. And for, yeah, how long? Yeah, if you're looking to book the entire December timeline, I'd say the 5th. I'd put them all on the 1st, the 8th, and the 15th, because after that you're into winter break.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be able to commit. So you're saying moving it to weekly? That
Potentially,
would,
yes.
yeah, that wouldn't work for,
Okay, so then
at least for me. I mean, every 2 weeks is a stretch to make it work as it is. So I think just getting whatever those dates are and having agreement here, so we know when those dates are. Whatever. I mean, because even if we start on the 1st, then we're off of the schedule again already. And so this was one of the things I know that I've brought up before of, if we're meeting every 2 weeks, how do we continue that? Where does that go when they switch other things? It messes with things for at least my schedule. So in my opinion, if we can lock in right now what those are, and from my perspective, I wouldn't be able to commit to weekly in December.
Yeah, so I was gonna say if we could do the 10th and then the 1st as Barb suggested. I think if we can schedule, and I know that it might cause issue or it might be a little more difficult to do weekly, but if we can schedule on the 8th and the 15th, just schedule it as the possible meeting dates, and then we can come back on the 1st.
Can you say which month you're talking about, please? I'm flipping through the calendars.
I'm sorry, my bad. So November 10th, schedule the meeting, and that will go with our same cadence. So in 2 weeks, we'll have another meeting. Instead of meeting on November 24th, which is Thanksgiving, we would meet on December 1st. I propose that we do schedule December 8th, December 15th, only because just so that we have an idea that we might be able to meet every week, but we can assess on December 1st if we need to meet every week. But if we are able to schedule it, at least then we have some idea or something on the books just in case we need to meet every week, instead of waiting till December 1st and then we decide, oh man, we need to meet every week. And then that will be a lot harder to make that work in December than to schedule that now in October. Does that make sense? And I know that Andre said he already like that.
I'm just, for me, and if I don't have them booked in now, I'm not going to have them, and I can't book all 3 of those. So I'm just worried about, like, today we had to wait even to get to quorum. And so if we're booking and doing these things, I think you're very likely not to end up with quorum, at least from the perspective of mine. This has switched so many different times on the schedule. It's very difficult. So like from my preference, I mean, I guess we can book whatever, and we'll either have quorum or we won't, I guess, if that's what we're choosing to do.
Yeah, I mean, my suggestion is just really like to schedule those times And then December 1st, really reassess, do we even need to have every week? But give enough leeway time for folks to have that scheduled if they can. And we can reassess if we actually really do need them. That way we're not just a week before some of these days saying like we need to schedule these, and now we're gonna need to possibly go weekly to try to get things done. But if we are able to get most of the work done where we don't need weekly, then we can always cancel some of those days, if that makes sense, or only do one of those 3 days in December. But thank you, Andre, for mentioning that. Any other suggestions from folks?
I was going to say, this isn't even really the full group now, right? So we might have people, I think it's just kind of impossible for us to know. So I support the idea of just scheduling it as much as possible, since we have limited meetings before the end of the year, and then hoping that we get quorum as much as possible.
So are for those 3 dates, those are going to be sent out then?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other feedback on those dates? Okay, so it sounds like for the most part, we have some consensus on November 10th, or sorry, let me get the dates right. November 10th, December 1st, December 8th, December 15th. With the understanding that on December 1st, we'll come back and just look to see if we need to do weekly in the next steps from that date. That sound good? Oh, okay, great. Barb, do you have that?
Yes,
Okay, and now we are in adjournment. If someone wants to do a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Can I get a? Thank you, Andre. So moved by Ruben, second by Andre. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Okay, looks like everyone wants to adjourn. So meeting adjourned, everyone have a good night. We will see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.